Hello everyone, welcome to my another hands-on lab. And in this lab, what we're going to do, we will deploy an application load balancer, and that application load balancer will be used to traffic loads across a bunch of servers that have been deployed in different availability zones, right? So we will deploy a simple web application on Amazon EC2 instance, and we will observe how load balanced between different servers through application load balancer. First, what we will do, we will launch a pair of EC2 instance on AWS, and then we will bootstrap them to install web servers and content, and then we will try to access those instances independently, right? So it's simple as that. And next, what we will do, we will create an application load balancer, and we will add those instances that we have created to the load balancer. And what will happen from now on, once we have application load balancer created, we will try to use the DNS of that load balancer to access our application. And that way, what will happen, application load balancer, we make sure the traffic is equally balanced between those servers, right? And then we will see how to monitor different load balancer metrics on Amazon CloudWatch. All right, so that's all. And without further ado, let's start. So what I'm going to do now, I will go to EC2 service, and from here, I will try to create two instances. So let's give a name to my EC2 instance. Let's say I'm calling it my EC2, or let's give a different name. Let's call it a web server or web application, right? So this will be the name of my two EC2 instances that I'm going to create. And there are different AMI you can choose. For the demo, I'm choosing Amazon Linux AMI, and you can leave everything as it is. And because I don't want to make any additional cost, so I will go with the smallest instance type, which is T2 micro. And finally, if you want to SSH into those servers, you can create a KPI. But for this demo, I'm not too much worried about SSH into the servers, so I will proceed without a KPI. So now let's choose our network settings or VPC where we will deploy our EC2 instances, right? So let's choose this one, network settings, and then let's choose the other one and leave the subnets as it is, or if you want, you can choose the other one as well. I'm leaving as it is. And for the time being, make sure this auto-ascend public IP is enabled, because we are trying to access EC2 instance from public IP address first. So it needs to be enabled. And then if you want, you can create a new security group, or you can use an existing one. But for the demo, let's create a new security group. Let's give a name to this security group. And also the description is required as well. And then, because as I said, I'm not going to SSH into the server, so I'm just removing this rule. Rather, let's add a different rule. And because these web servers will be used for web applications which will be accessed on port 80 or HTTP protocol, so let's make a rule for HTTP and leave everything as it is. And I want it to be accessed from outside of the world, so let's make source type anywhere. So that's all, that's what I want. And finally, leave everything as it is. Go to advanced details, and as I said, that we will deploy an application and it will be defined in user data. So under the advanced sections, go to user data, and I'm giving you a script that you need to copy and paste in your case. So that's what you want. That's all, right? And let's go to, and also one more thing, I want to create two instances. So let's select two. So that's all. And let's launch the instance, right? So it will take a few moments when the EC2 instance gets created. Let's go to view all instances, and let's for a few moments. All right, so we have two instances created, and we can see those two instances are running right now. But let's wait for a few more moments so that we have status checks passed as well, right? So let's wait for a few seconds. right? So we have created two instances, and we can see the instances are in running state and two status checks are passed for both two instances. So we are good to go. Now what we will do, we'll try to access our applications from the public IP address, and to do that, make sure you select one of these two instances and then make sure you are in details tab and you can see public IP address. So let's copy the public IP address and open a new tab, and from here what you will do, just type http:// that's it, and copy and paste the public IP address that you copied. All right, so that's all, and shortly you can see that you can access the applications, right? And the application just displays the instance ID where the application has been deployed. Let's do the same thing for other web app. So let's go to the next is2 instance, copy the public IP address and paste it in the browser, and shortly you can see the other application as well. Basically they're the same thing, but what's the difference is each application shows the instance ID where it has been deployed. All right, so what I'm going to do now, so we have two instances created, but it's good to access those applications through load balancer, and load balancer will divert the traffic based on load. For example, if two people connect to the load balancer, one will be redirected to instance 1 and other one will be redirected to instance P, right? So that way load balancer can help us to distribute load among different EC2 instances, right? So what we will do, we will create a load balancer. So make sure you are in EC2 dashboards, and from here in the very bottom you can see load balancer. Go there and then click on create load balancer, right? There are different kinds of load balancer, but for our case, we're going to use application load balancer. So click on create, give a name to this load balancer. Let's say my ALB, right? ALB means application load balancer, and it will be used for public facing applications. So you choose internet facing, leave everything as it is, choose the VPC where your EC2 instance has been deployed. So I choose the one, and next you need to choose two availability zones. So it's required that you should choose at least two availability zones and one subnet per zone, and the load balancer will route traffic to targets in these availability zones only, right? So let's go with first one, and as I said, you have to choose at least one subnet within that zone, right? And then for the next availability zone, make sure you choose the other one as well, right? So these are the two subnets where I have deployed my applications, right? Okay, that's all. And then we need to, can you remember for EC2 instance, we create a security group. We can do the same thing for load balancer as well. Load balancer will be associated with a security group as well. And from the security group, we can block unnecessary traffic, right? Let's close this one and let's choose the one that I have created, right? So that's all. And now we will create a listener. So what is listener? So basically listener will define what will happen if someone tries to access application through load balancer, how load balancer will distribute loads between different EC2 instances. So those kind of definitions or configurations will be defined in listeners, right? Basically listeners consists of a bunch of rules that will define how the load balancer route requests to its registered targets, right? So for that, first we'll create a target group, and the target group will define what EC2 instance will be used behind the load balancer, right? So there are many ways we can define the target group. First of all, we can go with instance, IP address, Lambda functions, another application load balancer, right? But for this demo, we're going to use our instances, and let's give a name to this target group. So let's say my target group, right? And then define the protocol. So basically protocol will says at which port the load balancer will divert the traffic to, right? So it will be port 80 on the EC2 instance, and then choose the VPC where EC2 instance has been deployed, right? And then we need to define the health check as well. So basically what health check does, it periodically checks whether the EC2 instance that belong to the load balancers are active or not. So it will periodically ping a specific path, right? And those kind of definitions can be defined in health check. So in the health check, you can define what will be the healthy threshold. So what healthy threshold says it says the number of consecutive health checks that need to be succeed before we consider an instance as healthy. Similarly, we have something called unhealthy threshold. So unhealthy threshold is just the opposite. So basically, unhealthy threshold says what will be the number of consecutive health checks that need to be failed before we consider a target as unhealthy, right? So there are different configurations you can define. So leave them default as it is, all right? And that's all. So let's go to the next page. And oh, sorry, I made a mistake. So maybe you cannot use underscore. So let's just use the hyphen, right? And let's go to the next page. All right, and now you can see we have two instances that we have created previously, and we can see it here because we are deploying our load balancer on the same VPC, right? So we can see what instance are in that VPC. So let's choose both of them and let's click on include as pending below, right? So those two instance has been added to the target group. Now let's create the target group. All right, so the target group has been created. Now let's go back to our load balancer creation page. Let's refresh the target group thing. So I refresh this thing and let's select the target group that I have created. So what will happen whenever someone tries to access our load balancer on port 80, they will be redirected to one of these two instances that belong to this target group, right? It's as simple as that. So that's all. If you want, you can create more listeners as well, but I will okay with just one, right? And you can leave everything as it is. All right. So now let's click on create load balancer. All right. So the load balancer has been created. So let's go to the load balancer. All right. So let's wait for a few more minutes so that we have stayed active. All right. Now we can see our application load balancer has been active. Now what we will do, we will try to get the DNS of this load balancer. So let's select the load balancer, and in details tab you can see the DNS name, right? So we will copy the DNS name and we will try to access our application through the load balancer. All right, so let's open a new tab, and from here paste the load balancer DNS and press enter, right? So you will not be able to access, we can able to access our application through load balancer, right? So now we can see we are not using public IP address of EC2 instance anymore. We are just using the DNS record of our load balancer. And you can see the instance ID, make a note of this instance ID. It ends with 7E0. If I refresh the page, it will be a different instance ID. And if I keep refreshing the page, it will be the other one, right? So every alternate request will be redirected to another EC2 instance, right? So that is the purpose of having application load balancer. Imagine you have hundreds of EC2 instances where you have deployed your applications for high availability purposes, right? And the load balancer will sit in front of those 100 EC2 instances, and as a user, I will try to access those applications through the load balancer. And if millions of traffic will come through the load balancer, they will be redirected or distributed among different EC2 instances that sit behind the load balancer, right? So that is the way we can use application load balancer. All right, but before I finish this lab, I would like to tell you very quickly how we can measure different load balancer metrics through CloudWatch. And to do that, I will go to CloudWatch service, right? And then from CloudWatch service page, I will go to metrics. All right, so let's go to metrics and let's select all metrics. And then from here, I will choose application ELB. All right, and then we can explore different metrics that are being reported to CloudWatch from application load balancer. For example, let's choose this one, per application load balancer metrics, right? And from here, we can see different metrics that has been reported to our CloudWatch service. For example, we can monitor load balancer related to latency. We can monitor metrics related to request count, healthiness, unhealthiness, host counts. So there's so many things we can monitor basically. All right. So that's all about having elastic load balancer in place for your application. All right, so that's all. Thank you.